Welcome to Reanimated, episode 127. My name is Stuart. Joining me is AJ Conrad, the inconceivable. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm excellent. How are you?
Super, super duper. We are here to talk about zombie news and then discuss episode one of Dead Set,
Yeah.
the British zombie show that has quite a bit of meta information in it. It helps if you have seen Big Brother and are a fan of it between 2003 and 2010 or something like that. I forget when it was on Channel 4, but this is back in the day.
But it's
But
now
yeah,
Netflix, which is good
now on
for binge watching purposes.
absolutely.
You know. But before we get to that, we have a couple of little news tidbits, a couple which scare me a little bit. But we'll start on the lighter side, which is the wonderful Jason Dixon, or I don't know, the misguided sometimes Jason Dixon, responsible for that wonderful zombie nativity scene that has been a controversy the last couple of years, got in trouble for a bit of a zombie prank that he and his friend played. So they basically took some sort of like I guess just parts like fake heads and body parts and all that fun stuff, and posted photos of these things on Facebook and said that they had stumbled upon like bodies under this frozen pond in Claremont County. And really, this was just using a lot of the tools that Jason had put together for his zombie nativity scene. And, they just threw him into a pond and thought that this would be fun. It was just, I guess people fell for the post, and I don't know that I would have, but I don't know. What are your thoughts, Stuart?
Well, I think it's pretty irresponsible in that they lied about where they were. Like they were just in a pond in their
The backyard,
backyard,
yeah.
but they said they were in a pond at East Fork Lake where a 16-year-old boy was a dead 16-year-old boy was dragged out of that body of water just earlier this year.
Mm.
So it seems kind of in bad taste to that's like too soon. Yeah, or not this year. I guess it's 2017, so that was in 2016. But it's definitely too soon. It also kind of treads a line where the First Amendment doesn't necessarily protect that kind of activity because then it is the yelling fire in a crowded theater where people can get hurt sort of scenario.
Hmm.
Um, and in this case, it's what if there's probably missing people in Cincinnati area, and that can just be pretty damaging to do that kind of thing.
I think that that's right. I think that these kinds of pranks, we've seen them before, and I'm not saying that I think that they're great because I do find it honestly distasteful to do this kind of thing. However, there's a way that people have done them in the past, and I don't know that you would necessarily needed to pick a lake where a 16-year-old had actually died. I think you could done it a little bit more general and then put a disclaimer up at the end of the video or whatever you're doing so that people know that it's fake. And I think that they stepped over the line a bit here. So I think it was in some ways blown out of proportion because this went on for 2 hours. It wasn't a very long time that they kept this going, from what I understand. But even so, just the fact that they thought that this would be an okay thing to do makes me question their judgment. And also, for somebody who has gotten into trouble for these scenes and has had like all of that controversy. My guess is that somebody's looking for publicity. That's just my personal thought on this, and to me, that's even more in poor taste. But what can you do? But yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. Um, on my weird darker notes of things. Here in New York, apparently, in like over December and even now, they have had to quarantine about 500 kitty cats because
Not kitty cats.
kitty cats, and they have found patient zero, but basically these cats have been exposed, and I think a lot of them have contracted an avian flu, which is not supposed to happen. And so when they
Did
discover
you just
this
say avian flu?
in Avian, yeah.
Like the water?
No, avian, bird.
Avian, I think.
Avian. All right. Evian is the water. Avian is a bird.
Sorry, it sounds like you're saying the same thing. Evian water.
Uh, in it.
Evian flu.
All right. Keep it coming. Keep it coming, Chuckles.
Right, run on.
But in any case, they found it in one of the shelters, and then found that it had spread to cats in the boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn in those shelters. And so basically, they have this massive warehouse where they're taking care of these infected cats. And it is worrying people at the CDC because you don't normally see things jump. And then the CDC also confirmed that one of the veterinarians who had been exposed to one of these animals was infected at the animal shelter. And they had never seen this before because it was the first case of cat to human transmission of the flu. So when stuff starts happening like that with influenza viruses, and they worry that either strains are changing, and typically they're morphing into something that we don't necessarily have a resistance or a vaccine for. So
That's terrifying.
pretty scary. I was like, why is this not more prominent? Maybe because they're trying not to panic people. But
Obviously, terrifying that it jumped species, but it was apparently mild and short-lived for the CDC person. So
right.
that's good news, at least.
Yep. And then, to just, and this has nothing to do with the flu, but in Nevada, they are reporting that this woman who had traveled to India and had become ill there came back here and ended up being resistant to basically every single form of antibiotics that are around that we have to fight things. So she basically, I think that they tried something like maybe 26 different types of antibiotics, and unfortunately she passed away. Which just, new flu's coming out, antibiotics aren't working, zombie apocalypse just around the corner.
Or The Stand, one or the other.
Or The Stand. Now they are developing antibiotics that are more soil-based and apparently have a little bit more power in terms of fighting some of these strains that are currently resistant. But it does highlight the issue that is worldwide, which is the overuse of antibiotics in livestock and in humans, basically, which have basically brought a lot of the normal defenses for these kinds of things down. So on that cheery note, I don't know. Like, are you ready to talk about a Dead Set?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so Dead Set episode 1. This show throws you in at the deep end, but it gets a lot done in 45 minutes, which is the length of the first episode.
Yeah, and this is the longest episode, right?
The rest of them are like half this length. It's a real pocket-sized zombie show. So it's kind of like Luther and some of these other British shows that are short season-wise, and this one didn't do a second season. So it's I think it's 5 episodes, and this is the longest one at 45 minutes. So if you're looking for something to just binge, you can probably do it in a morning.
Yeah, and I think it did do a lot, as you said, in a small amount of time. And I actually really enjoyed this first episode a lot. I think that they managed to capture the reality TV format and the ridiculousness, at least in my opinion, that goes with it very succinctly. They have, your usual producers and directors, and you've got your executive assistants, and the grunts basically being treated like crap and all that fun stuff. They managed to pack a lot of drama into these 45 minutes.
A lot of characters and a lot of cameos. If you were familiar with Big Brother from this time period, which I guess was like 2008, people from the 2008 season of Big Brother were on this show, and Davina McCall was the host of Big Brother for like 10 years, and she has a pretty big role, speaking part, and I guess all those other cameos also have speaking parts where they're pretending to have a reunion, probably they actually are having a reunion.
Yeah.
You know.
I thought it was. I thought the setup was just so well done, and as you said, it's a ton of characters, but it still doesn't feel like too many. They do cut from storyline to storyline pretty quickly, but in enough, they give enough information just to give you the sketch of what is going on with each character, and I thought that was done. The editing I thought was very well done.
It was helpful to watch it with subtitles, not because people all have insane accents,
Some
although
of them
the
do,
first
though.
and yeah, some of them do, and just to get names too, like because otherwise they don't necessarily say like the Kelly's side piece at work. His name turns out to be Danny eventually, but you don't
I
actually know
no.
that until way late. But yeah, so like they introduce at least 5 or 6 people on the production side. Like Patrick, who's the handlebar mustache asshole producer,
Mm-hmm.
Claire, who is his like assistant producer. Then you got a couple of PAs who are Sophie and Kelly. Chloe is another production person who seems to just her role is to have sex with people and then be mean to Kelly. Kelly's our hero.
Yep.
Danny's her side piece. Rick's her real boyfriend who's not on the show and is out in the world somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got all the people on the show who have crazy names like Space and Joplin and Gollum, that's Gollum and Joplin are the same person.
Yeah.
But it takes a minute to figure out who all these people are. And yeah, like you said, I think that the way this show is packaged, I think it's kind of genius
Mm-hmm.
that you've got that they're putting Big Brother and the Zombocalypse in the same place. It's clearly there's a lot of messaging going on here. It seems to be quite damning of reality TV. But then the character Joplin, who is talking about how stupid reality TV is when he's on a reality TV show,
Mm-hmm.
is also kind of being mocked. So you kind of end up somewhere in the middle. Kelly and most of the people in production all seem to despise and disparage the people who are on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Which is so, I mean, that's kind of like besides the point of the zombie stuff. But then when you extrapolate out that, or you can, try to say like, modern consumers or just zombies or whatever, any of your preferred allegories for zombies in modern society, to have it happening on the set of a reality TV show is pretty cool, even though it seems a little dated now.
It seemed a little dated, but I think that some of the messaging is still, or some of the messages I think it's trying to go for are still there. And so one of the things that happens, I like what they do with this setup is that while they're prepping for this huge eviction night, which is a big deal on Big Brother. For those of you who haven't seen it, basically Big Brother, they're all in the house and people get voted off the show, or that's how it's supposed to happen, I guess. But they get rated by the public, and they get evicted. They do interviews. They tell the outside world what's going on in the house, like the real story, all the gossipy stuff and all that fun stuff. And in the midst of prepping for this, there's actually a crisis going on outside that they are all ignoring because they're worried about their ratings and they're worried about staying on air. And there's like a whole crowd of people like at this eviction party. And just basically the idea that we're paying attention to very fluffy and tabloidy type non-events when there's real stuff going on in the world. I mean, that's like a common theme, and I think that they do a very good job at laying that out here.
Yeah, Patrick has that one quote where he's like, "Why are people even rioting? It's not like it's the '80s. We have distractions. Why don't they just stay home and watch the telly?"
Yeah, I know. And they do, as you said, I think that they probably were just having a reunion, but they do a great job at weaving in just sort of the like
the inane bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, look, I'm reading a book about Kabbalah now. Yeah, it's perfect. Like
Yeah, no.
it's pitch perfect, I feel like.
Yeah, they've got that, and then it quickly goes into what most zombie fans would see as the telltale signs of a zombie apocalypse starting. And so you've got you've got the runners traveling trying to get to the studio, and different obstructions are getting in the way. Like they see this car sort of out there, and of course encounter their first zombie, which doesn't do anything good. Like the security guard or the driver that's with them gets bitten.
But you don't actually see like the way that they do that first zombie attack and the next few. It's all just about
Off
like
screen.
they use those blue or white contacts or whatever because that's what zombie eyes turn white or bright blue. and then there's like they make a face and then real quick cut. Yeah, so it's a very interesting way to a nod, I think, to the audience, like, you know what this is.
Yep.
It doesn't seem to be any that they have a problem with gore, because they definitely have very gory scenes later on. They're just making this decision to keep that really brief, those
Right.
first attacks.
Well, and I also think it's kind of an interesting thing because as you get closer and closer to the crisis point of this episode, it's basically like reality is encroaching upon this reality TV show, which seems really funny if you think about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
they're really doing a good job at just making that tension mount because everybody knows what's coming and you're just waiting for it. But it's still a nice way of presenting it. So I really liked how they told this story.
it escalates extremely quickly too. Like, the studio gets overrun in a matter of minutes. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how long it is on screen, but it goes so quickly because Pippa like just been evicted, is having her exit interview or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
when zombies get into the crowd, and between zombies getting into the crowd and into the production booth, it's like, it's just a snap of the fingers, really.
Right.
and,
And
and
then
then yeah, most of the crew and all of the audience are all done. That's it. It's over.
right. And then I mean, I have to give hats off to Davina, the host, because she gets a really great scene where she gets, basically
Hmm.
her throat torn out, but her death scene is pretty good.
Oh
And
yeah, like her final slump over is.
yeah,
I hope she stretched for that.
yeah, it's pretty. I mean, she does a great job. It's the flip of a switch, and it's the flip of a switch in the way. So you've got the eviction going on, but then you've also have Chloe basically giving Kelly a hard time because she's been making out with Danny or whatever, and Chloe's sort of like, oh, I did that too, and very quickly she gets taken out by Danny.
She
In
establishes her how unlikable she is,
Yeah,
and
and
then
then
within
gets
within seconds she's killed too. Like, that's the thing. This episode, it's I mean, it's hitting where it needs to. It's just I admire it for its efficiency. You
Yeah,
know.
no, it's great. And I mean, it shows you who people are really, really quickly. So, for example, Patrick is so slimy, smarmy. We've seen that in the few little lines that he not little lines, but you don't see too much of him. And then suddenly, when all this happens, he is like seriously the most despicable person ever. Like, he leaves this poor guy in a wheelchair to get eaten and hides in a stall and does nothing
Yeah.
to help the
And
guy.
then locks Claire out all within seconds too. Like,
Yep,
he locks out his assistant producer Claire, she gets eaten, and then pushes the guy in a
I
wheelchair
know.
at a zombie,
Like
and then
there's
hides in a toilet stall. Like,
there's no
fantastic.
question about his character. Like, they do such a great job at showing how despicable he is in like seconds. So I thought that was really awesome. And then I also like how they show Rick, who is Kelly's estranged boyfriend. He's kind of stuck out in the country waiting for a train, and he's not seeing any action other than that the trains aren't coming. So that was kind of an interesting thing too.
Well, and
Is
he
that
got mugged, right? Like,
well that too?
that was kind of the first sign that things weren't quite right, when a couple of parents and a child mug
Hmm.
this 20-something guy who's just like pulled over to see if they're okay. He's just like, honestly, this episode kind of introduces his relationship with Kelly, and then leaves him alone until later on in the show.
Hmm.
Kelly, I liked Kelly's let's call it evolution of dealing with zombies as the show goes on. At first,
Yeah.
she's a screamer, first of all.
Uh-huh.
So she does a lot of, when Danny comes back and eats Chloe, she does a lot of screaming, and screaming through the door and calling him a see you next Tuesday. I don't know if I want to say that
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
podcast. Then, she like locks herself in, gets a little bit of the news before the TV goes off the air, and she's like, oh, this is really bad. And then we kind of transition to the next day.
She also, I will note that her screaming was so piercing that my husband, was off doing his own thing while I was watching this, and asked several times, who on earth is that screaming? Because he was like, can you wear headphones to listen to that? Her evolution is excellent, and I
Yeah.
do like the fact that when she finally offs Danny, it's like with these crazy scissor things, like
Yeah.
she goes all in very quickly.
True, but I mean, they show her stabbing him in other places other than the head at first,
Right.
but manages to get one in the head. Her foray out into the studio is really cool. She goes out into the hallway, runs into zombies, runs out. A crawler comes at her, runs over to the van. There's no keys. She goes out to find the keys in the hand of the body in front of the van. She can't get him out, and she's like or screams in frustration, which then brings two zombies, and then she just starts screaming more and running away until she can get into the Big Brother house. She makes it inside the cameraman area.
Yeah, with the cameraman in quick pursuit of her. So she ends up in there, and it's also interesting how the contestants are dealing with what's going on, because one of them notices that the cameras are off, and then they're all like, "Oh, is this like part of the show? Are they messing with our minds and all this stuff?" And just being exactly what they are on the show. And
actually, yeah, up to this point, they've really done a decent job on the show of kind of introducing us to them as characters too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With scenes interspersed, even though they have no idea what's going on outside, because in the idea of the show is that they're kind of cut off and they have to just deal with each other. In this case, they hear a lot of commotion, but they're also having a party the night before,
right?
So they don't hear what the screams for what they are, which is carnage.
Right.
They just they just think that the eviction was a party. Yeah. So when Kelly gets in there and she's covered in blood and holding the scissors still, it's a funny few scenes where they're still just being the kind of douchebags that they are on the show, until she has, like, Marky opens the fire door and lets the zombie in, and she has to go full zombie survivor on them.
Right, but not before it takes a chunk out of one of them. But I love how before she does this, they're all accusing her of being mental. And, and she's just a new contestant. And they think that's her shtick. Like, they think that this is part of the whole, the weird drama that they're trying to inject into the show. So when the cameraman zombie bursts in, that is really a great scene.
Yeah, and the reactions of all the contestants are right on. It's really cool. Although, this group of people as your potential zombie survival group, not giving it's not exactly the crew you might wish for.
No. And she even has these moments of exasperation where you can tell that's exactly what she's thinking too. Especially when they're messing with her. The whole reason why the cameraman guy got in there is that Marky is like, "Oh, nothing's out there," and they do the jump scare thing, where he finally bursts into the room, the zombie. And so she almost rolls her eyes like, "Are you kidding me?" So that's pretty much it for the first episode, where, I mean, they really do a fantastic job of just having the setup as a reality show, and then true reality, or the zombie reality, sets in the last scene. So I really applaud whoever wrote and edited this show. This is really a good job to me in terms of storytelling.
Yeah, it's a little frenetic with the number of people that they introduce, but it works because by halfway through you figured out who they all are and you're totally engaged, and you're watching the snowball effect of a zombie apocalypse just kind of rolling through this environment, with the exception of this little isolated area. That's what makes it kind of so cool, is watching people having to figure it out over and over again in a way.
Right. And I have to say, I mean, maybe it's good that they kept this to one season, but so far I'm really enjoying it. So when I saw that the next episodes are so short, I was like, oh, that's a little bit of a bummer. But then again, we have talked about this before, and British TV tends to do this thing where they'll do like one season or two seasons and be done with it, and they're done with the storyline. And sometimes I think that's a better way to go, and you're not just dragging things along forever. So I'm looking forward to watching and reviewing the rest of this with you.
Yeah, if only In the Flesh hadn't been cut off in its prime.
I do think that we could have done with one more season in The Flesh, but you can't have everything.
No, not everything. Either way, so join us again for next time on Reanimated, when we go into a couple more episodes of Dead Set. Yeah, in the meantime, you can get a hold of us on Twitter, ReanimatedPcast, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and reanimatedpodcast.com is our website. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Ciao.
Bye bye.